Okay, guys, we are live. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nikhil Gupta from Trade Promotion Council of India's editorial department, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this exciting webinar on stirring the electric vehicle revolution in India. For this discussion, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panel comprising of Mr. Pranav Singanapalli, founder and CEO, Emote Electric. Um, just give me a second. यूट्यूब की आवाज आ रही है. I'm so sorry about that technical issue. Yeah. So for this discussion, I would like to also extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panel comprising of Mr. Pranav Singanapalli, founder and CEO, Emote Electric, Mr. Parshuram Pakka, founder and CEO, Grafton Motors, Mr. Nikhil Gupta, business head, EVCS and PVI, Delta Electronics, India, Professor Shubhadeep Roy, Associate Professor, IIM Ahmedabad, Dr. Devika Vashisht, Assistant Professor, Marketing Management, IIM Sirmaur, and Dr. S.K. Dubey, Project Advisor, TERI, and ex-General Manager, NTPC Limited. 3 years ago in Paris, a resolve was made by the leaders of the world to limit the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. Keeping in line with the Paris commitments on climate change, India is steering a revolution which is directed not only at reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, but also facilitating the adoption of electric vehicles. EVs will not only help curb the country's carbon emissions, but also cut down its rising import bill amidst the inflating fuel prices. EVs are also believed to be less expensive when it comes to operational and maintenance costs. According to a report by RBSA advisors, the EV market in India is expected to grow at an unprecedented CAGR of 90% from 2021 to 2030, and the market is expected to be worth more than 150 billion by 2030. Billion dollars. Bolstered by these projections, investors are showing an interest in this segment. Last year, Ola Electric raised a whopping US dollar 200 millions from investors in a fresh funding round, while TPG Rise Climate and Abu Dhabi's ADQ also agreed to invest close to around 1 billion in Tata Motors' upcoming EV subsidiary. To help the EV revolution gather more steam in the country, the Government of India is moving towards accelerated adoption of electric vehicles by 2030. It is supporting the sector with policies like transitioning at least 30% vehicle sales to EV by 2030, FAME scheme, and PLI for EV sector. Different Indian states are also carefully crafting policies to support the mushrooming of an EV landscape in their territory. For example, Maharashtra, Delhi, and Gujarat are handing out substantial incentives to EV buyers, even making the upfront cost of electric vehicles competitive with their ICE counterparts in certain cases. Government think tank Niti Aayog has estimated that such policies are expected to push EV penetration to 30% for private cars, 70% for commercial vehicles, 40% for buses, and 80% for two-wheelers and three-wheelers by 2030. The road to the electrification of the Indian automobile industry is a bumpy one, though. Impediments in this journey include a feeble charging infrastructure, the soaring cost of batteries, a lack of large-scale domestic manufacturing ecosystem, and high import dependence for raw materials, and apprehensions about the performance of the vehicle and initial customer inertia. When one looks at EV adoption in the past, the numbers have been low. Reports suggest that in India, EV sales accounted for barely 1.3% of the total automobile sales during 2020-21. Data suggested from government's Vahan dashboard has said that electric three-wheelers, however, registered a blistering 101.74% growth in sales in fiscal 2022 in India, notching up a record 45.83% share in the overall segment during the year. The million-dollar question that arises now is that will the sector be able to pick up pace in tune with its stated potential and deliver the desired economic benefits to India? This webinar will deliberate on the current EV ecosystem in the country, its growth prospects, and how India can emerge as an EV manufacturing and export hub. To kickstart the discussion, I would like to ask Mr. Pranav Singanapalli, founder and CEO, Emote Electric, about how he sees the EV ecosystem in the country by the end of this decade. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nikhil, and I'm happy to take that question. Just to explain real quickly what we are doing. So we are making petrol motorcycle competitors. So that means electric vehicles that can compete on price, performance, and convenience. And we see that being we all agree that that electric vehicles are the future. But how are we going to get there? That is the important question, and that will also answer where we will be in certain years of time. So right now we are at the cusp of, we are at the very beginning of the beginning. So if we play the cards right, or if the industry plays the cards right, then we could probably see that within a decade we would already be at a 50% mark, and that's a phenomenal growth rate actually to be able to get to that kind of market penetration. So that is certainly a possibility, and it could be as early as 2030. But some of the challenges or some of the news items or the news that has been coming out about electric vehicles with the fires and whatnot, and they've also started claiming lives these days. Those can put brakes on this. So a lot of people who are on the fence about buying electric vehicles, they are now going to wait another 2-3 years before they purchase one. So the diehard people will always buy them. I mean, people who like electric vehicles, people who really don't want to be spending say 50,000 a year on petrol, they'll buy them anyway. But it's all these fence sitters, and that's a sizable number. We risk losing a couple of years. To all these negative news about quality control and vehicles going up in flames and things like that. And these are all down to the fact that a lot of the vehicles are, well, they're really not products that companies in India have really developed themselves. They don't understand the products, and that's just some of the root cause of this. So while we do see that there is a lot of demand, there is also some amount of pent-up demand, but this demand is just going to grow in the coming years, and petrol is not really going to get cheaper, not anytime soon at least. So that is a big push for the market to go towards electric vehicles. But we also risk losing it over substandard products. So 10 years is a long time to predict, but I think somewhere we should certainly be at a stage where at least 30% of all vehicles sold will be electric in 10 years time.
Nikhil, you are on mute.
Can you hear me now? Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts with us. I would now like to invite Dr. Devika Vishisht, Assistant Professor, IIM Sirmaur, and Professor Shubdeep Roy, Associate Professor, IIM Ahmedabad, to throw some light on how they view the current EV adoption in India and how can consumer behavior be molded to promote their adoption.
So we'll start with Sir.
Yes,
with Sir, please.
Mr. Roy.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you the academic point of view, and that is where we come to behavior and adoption. If we talk about adoption, the most fundamental model of adoption which works here is the model of technology adoption, and which holds true for any new technology, any new innovation. And there are three major pillars of that which determine whether I would adopt as a consumer, I would adopt a new technology or not. The first thing is the perceived usefulness of a product. Second is the perceived ease of use of a product. And the third is the perceived price value of the product. This one obviously is a later addition. Now, let us try to look into EVs. And I'm not talking about bicycles, motorbikes, or cars. I'm in general talking about the EV vehicles as a industry. So if we look into the perceived usefulness, I really don't think there is any doubt in the standard Indian audience's mind that it is useful. People know that, yes, it is good, it is environment friendly, it is in the long run, it is cost effective and blah, blah, blah. But there are two major issues here in terms of the perceived ease of use and the perceived price value. What are the fundamental questions when it comes to my mind if I go to buy a Kona? I mean, sometime back we were in a Hyundai showroom and we saw the car and the shape and everything was amazing. The first question, where is the nearest charging point? How much charge do I need to do it, give it every day? What if in the middle of the road my charge goes off? And because petrol or fossil fuel driven cars have been there for a long period of time, these questions have actually they've become redundant for a petrol or a diesel car audience. We have in India systems like this that if you give a call, somebody will bring a one bottle of petrol to close to your car and you can get it filled. Now that is where we have gone with fossil fuel driven cars. Now that is a fundamental question which always will be there in the mind of the consumer, because the driving comfort and all these things are really, once you get inside the car, there's not much difference there. So how do we actually take care of that ease of use part? That once I buy, what happens next? Second is the perceived price value. Now, even when the government has announced that they are going to give tax benefits and things like that, if you still compare the standard price between a petrol and a electric vehicle of the same specifications, the electric car is way more expensive. And we cannot forget the fact that the car and the two-wheeler revolution in India started because banks started giving EMIs. Majority of Indian audience really do not pay bulk money and buy a car or a bike. So whenever it comes to that, what is the thing which goes into the back of my mind? How do I repay back? What is the term? What is my EMI? All these things get recalibrated. And then that prevents me. So the major objective of the marketer is to look into molding consumer behavior in these two aspects. How do I convince the consumer of the value in the long term? And how do I convince the customer about the ease of use? Your operational ease, in this case, what I'm talking about, operational ease. Because those are the two things which definitely in the next 5 years are going to haunt. Because I don't think usefulness is an issue. I mean, Delhi airport had electric buses almost like 8 years back. So people know. It is not that people do not know about this. I was in IIM Udaipur before this. Our service, one of the service vehicles was an electric scooter. And that was like 10 years back. So we know. It's not that we don't know about it. But when I'm going to buy, those are the questions which are coming to my mind. So I will hand it over to Devika to continue.
Thank you, sir. So basically, sir has, he has actually summarized, what are the things which can actually help the consumers to adopt, EV, especially in the Indian market. But then if we really want to detail it, then, we can start with understanding the challenges. Like we know the challenges, but then there are specific challenges in the sense, like as sir said, that, there is a problem of infrastructure. People are aware of, this importance of EV, but there is a problem with the infrastructure. So when we say infrastructure, we start with the roads, okay? We actually start discussing with the roads. Like, do we actually have those roads where, the EVs which we have, in the present market, are they very much, efficient or suitable for such roads in India? Second, when we say that EV works on a battery and we don't have any pollution issues, so do we have any standardized, charging system? Do we have, a charger which can actually charge your vehicle for around, say, 500 to 600 kilometers? Because presently, if we see on an average, EV can run, like 200 to 250 kilometers, which is like, if you see the behavior of consumers in India, they usually, opt for long drives. So if they are going for long drives on EV, right, you making use of EV vehicles. So is it like, for them it is, the trip won't be like, you can say, full of happiness. It will be like, troublesome, because they have to recharge after every, 3 to 4 hours. And then the question arises, how many charging points do we have, and at what distance do we have these charging points, and what time these charging points takes to charge the EV. So these are certain infrastructure issues. The second thing is that when we talk about the battery life, okay, we can, have a battery which can, give you running of for more kilometers. But then what is the cost of the battery? If you see the present battery status which is being used in the EVs, you'll find that, if I take example of Tata Nexon, like the EV which came, after RV400. So it is around, if we say talk about the base model, okay, so it's around like 14 to 18 lakhs. So suppose a person uses that EV, and this EV battery is, its lifespan is only of 7 to 8 years. After that, if the person wants to go for a new battery, he has to again spend around 12 to 13 lakhs only to buy a new battery. So this is a problem which is, which actually influences the people either to go for EV or not to go for EV, though they want to, okay. So since the question has been put up to us that how the things can be done which can mold consumers towards the adoption of EV, so I think if we can work on these challenges, and if these challenges, when they are worked upon and when they are, displayed to the audience, that, this new EV has these things, they don't have these kind of constraints. So I think in that case, we can have more inclination of consumers towards, buying EV in India. That is my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both the professors for bringing out these vital issues related to the EV sector. This brings me to my next question, for which I would like to request Mr. Nikhil Gupta, Business Head, EVCS and PVI, Delta Electronics, India, to share his thoughts on the budget proposal that has given a push to EVs by announcing that the government will set up EV charging stations at scale, which is one of the issues that was just highlighted. So, sir, what is your take on this, and what other policies should be followed to promote greater proliferation of public charging infrastructure in the country?
Yes, thanks, Nikhar. And I would start by repeating what you already mentioned in your introduction. Like India has set a target of 30% EV penetration for private cars, 70% for commercial vehicles, 40% for buses, and about 80% for two-wheelers by 2030. Now, this penetration and adoption of EVs is only possible once there is an adequate infra for charging is built up, and government is able to address the range anxiety for EV users, as Professor Roy also mentioned. Like, what if I go out of charge in the middle of a road? So all these anxieties are there in the minds of the users, and government certainly needs to take care of all those issues. Now, they are by all means, encouraging the use of EVs. And they've also introduced or presented the initiatives to boost EV infrastructure, or rather, I would say, EV ecosystem, to achieve their broader target of decarbonization. Now, a few of the things which they're already doing is like encouraging the ministries and government PSUs to consider EVs only for their new vehicle purchases, encouraging the private sector to create sustainable and innovative business models for battery and also energy as a service. Considering the constraints of space in the urban areas, government has recently released a draft on the battery swapping policy with formal interoperability standards. So that's going to immensely help the infrastructure building. Now, see, the overall program, there are around 48,000 EV chargers which are expected to be installed in next 3 to 4 years. By March 2022, this count is only, say, 2,000 public charging stations. The number of chargers could be a little higher, but then the count of charging stations is only 2,000 in India, and which is mostly concentrated in only few states and primarily in urban areas. Now, if you also look into the cost economics, see, considering the fixed cost for setting up a charging station, of course, excluding the land, and a few of the operating expenses, it'll take around 4 years for an EV charging station to reach the break-even point, which is with roughly 30% of asset utilization. So hence, asset utilization or the utilization of the charger which is being installed becomes a very, very important factor for anyone to consider the investment in building up the charging stations. Now, this utilization will only increase with the increase of number of electric vehicles on the road. So it's like same chicken and egg problem, whether the EV is first or the charging infra first. But then we have to target it from both the ends, and I think government is doing the right thing by bringing out all the relevant policies and incentives. See, earlier this year, government also allowed any individual or entity to set up a public charging station without any licensing. So that's one more step which they did to ease out the norms. Now, this cleared the way for the EV owners to charge their vehicles either at their home or at their offices with the same existing electricity connections at the same domestic tariff. The new policy, which they also announced in the budget, also allowed offering government lands to a few of the government agencies or the public agencies and private entities for setting up the public charging stations on a revenue sharing basis. So all these steps they are taking to promote more and more infrastructure development and making the overall process easier for anyone and everyone. Now, these liberalized norms, this will definitely attract the individuals, not will attract, I would say, it is attracting the individuals and startups to invest in this particular sector. See, the guidelines lay down the target of one public charging station in every 3-kilometer grid or 3 square kilometer grid in city areas and every 25 kilometer on the connecting highways in next 3 years. Probably that answers one of the query which Dr. Devika had. But then this is still under plan. This needs to be implemented the way it is said. So this is something which government is already doing to make the overall program easier. But as an EV user or as an EV owner today, the challenges what they face are in terms of lack of EV charging infrastructure and poor charging experience. See, many of the places I also hear that, they don't get that real experience of getting their cars or vehicles charged properly or getting the billing done properly. So that's what I refer to as poor charging experience. So as far as the accessibility to charging infra is concerned, we all need to come together and develop an ecosystem which includes, say, residential buildings, commercial buildings or hotels or highways and even other similar buildings. The stakeholders, the RWAs or the real estate firms or any property owners for that matter need to be proactive and consider EV charging as an essential amenity. See, today government is giving all comfort and ease without much regulations to enable setting up of the public charging stations, but later this may also come as a mandate. So then every building has to have an EV charging station. I mean, the talks are already on, but so far it's not a mandate, but it can come anytime. Now, as far as the reliable charging experience, which I mentioned is one of the key areas why people are not, really keen to adopt EVs as their next buy. I think we need to push for the standards and the India compatible chargers. The chargers which are designed in India, which are designed for India. At this moment, I see many of the products prevailing in the charging stations which are not suitable for the Indian cars or few of the cars which are there on the road. So all these efforts will not only improve the overall customer experience, but and also confidence in the new technology, but also boost the EV demand and probably solve, as I mentioned, the classic chicken and egg problem in the industry. Thank you, Devika. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sharing your insights. This brings me to one of the burning questions of the day, for which I would like Mr. Pakka, Parshuram Pakka, the founder and CEO of Grafton Motors, to answer. So, sir, what, according to you, will be the impact of the rise in global crude oil prices and the supply chain disruptions following the Russia-Ukrainian crisis? And, you know, when we see the Indian EV industry, so what is the impact in the long run and in the short run for the industry?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Nikhil, for this opportunity. Yeah, so it is very obvious that the rise in the global crude oil prices is pushing everyone to EV adoption, especially in India, especially for the two-wheelers. But again, there is a flip side to it. That is, there is a shortage of raw materials, and there is a huge spike in the cost of the raw materials. Because of that, the supply chain is getting disrupted. It's getting hampered significantly, and the cost of the EVs are also going to go high in another couple of months. So this will basically it is increasing the demand for the EV. At the same time, there is a shortage of the supply. Okay, so that will shoot up the cost of the EVs, EV two-wheelers especially in the India. When this is with respect to the short term. In the long term, definitely it will be a positive one, because people understand the need of electrification of the transportation. So that will be positive with respect to the long term, but with respect to the short term, it is hampering the progress significantly. Because as a EV manufacturer, EV two-wheeler manufacturer, we are seeing that spike in the raw material and the shortage of the raw material as well. And now there is a huge lead time for the raw materials. And unfortunately, we are dependent on the imports for the raw materials, such as magnets and other battery cells. So yeah, so that is it from my side. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your insights. This brings me to one of the very pertinent points that was raised earlier in the discussion, for which I would like to ask Dr. Dubey, Project Advisor Terry, and ex-General Manager NTPC Limited, that it is often understood that there's no fuel being burned and therefore there's no air pollution through COT happening while driving EVs, thanks to their lithium-ion batteries. However, if the source of the energy to power, or to power these cars comes from solar panels or wind turbines or nuclear or hydroelectric, if that is not the source, then their CO2 emissions will be much higher, than their counterparts. So, is the production process really an eco-friendly process, and is this vehicle truly environmentally sustainable? What are your thoughts, sir? Sir, you're on mute. Dr. Dubey, you're on mute. Sir, Dr. Dubey, you're on mute.
Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Now it's good.
Sorry, I forgot that I am on mute.
Yeah, no worries, sir. Just give me a minute. I'll just share your presentation.
So, if I don't know if what I'll do, I'll answer this question right now, and in an integrated manner. When I get opportunity next time to talk, I will show my full presentation. But right now, I will answer your question in the manner that your question is very good and very, very, very inquisitive question. It has been found that in EV vehicles, the GHG emissions emit in different stream of the production of and running of the EV vehicle. For example, vehicle manufacturing, batteries assembly and other aspects, batteries, minerals, electricity used for charging the batteries, and the total fuel cycle wheel to wheel, well to wheel. So it has been found that, oh, you are showing the slide. Can you go to the slide number 18, if you can go?
Slide number 18.
Yeah, this slide. I'm speaking on this slide. You can see that the gasoline fuel car has two components. One is vehicle manufacturing and another is fuel cycle. There are just two components are there. Whereas in case of EV vehicles, we have got vehicle manufacturing, battery assembly and other activities, and minerals used in batteries, and then electricity used for charging the batteries. So this way we can find that if we consider that base global average is of the order of say 20, then if we consider high GHG minerals for this EV production, then it will be about 22. But if we find a total clean electricity base, then we find three components. One is vehicle manufacturing, other is battery manufacturing, and minerals used in battery. So this way we can see that not much emissions are generated as compared to gasoline fuel car. This is the answer of the question.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insights. With this question, I would now like to come back to Dr. Roy and Professor Devika. So recently, the Union Road Transport Minister, Nikhil Gupta, said that rapid strides in technology and green fuel will reduce the cost of electric vehicles and bring their costs at par with petrol-run vehicles. Assuming that there is not much difference in the costs of these two vehicles in the future, do you see that the Indian customers will be open to buying EVs? Professor Roy, I would like to start with you, and then
I was thinking of giving Devika the first shot this time.
If Dr. Devika is good with it.
Okay, sir. Okay. Yes, so to answer this question, I would like to, quote some of the facts from the papers, the recent papers. Like we are academicians, so we'll go by the research papers and their findings. They mention, so they did a kind of survey, like the consumer behavior towards electric cars in India. So this survey, it shows that around 91% people, they are in the favor of adopting EV. They are in the favor of EV, and 9% they say that they are good with the conventional vehicles. So let me just read out the major finding. So it is 24 to 40 years of age group. Hello, I hope So it is actually the age group 24 to 40 years, which shows around the highest percentage, 55.7%. So I think even if you are, you say that the cost is equal. I mean, you are the cost to manufacture and the cost to, execute this concept on Indian roads. If that cost is equal, then still there are certain issues which needs to be, tackled, which needs to be answered. For example, when you say technology, now that technology, is it a technology for only with the consideration of, the infra you're talking about, or is it the technology which is related to the charging, or is it the technology which is related to the temperature issue? Because temperature issue is the biggest thing, because we know, the climate of India. If you go to Rajasthan, you'll find like the temperature is like the district like Bardmer, like these are like where you will see in the month of March, you'll see like 45 degree of temperature. So there, this concept of EV is completely failure. So when you say technology, what kind of the upgradation of technology will be done, and in what time it will be done? Because when consumers, if you see the consumer's mind in India, they are very much sensitive to price. Okay, so when we say 14 lakhs of car, 18 lakhs of cars, okay, we can say that now today people can actually afford this range of cars, but even to go for 80 lakhs wali car, in India, and to go with the EV, सिर्फ इस भरोसे पे that, गडकरी साहब ने बोला है, अच्छी technology आएगी. I don't think consumers will, go with a, in a second ki haan bhai, we would like to go for EV. I think there are certain issues, and there are actually very specific issues, and these issues need to be answered. What technology will be used, and in what time frame, with what time frame it will be used, and how to be executed, and what kind of benefit, what percentage of benefit can be given to the consumers, and how those benefits would be highlighted. Because when we are talking from the marketing perspective, we know this is the functional performance of the vehicle. Itna ye kaam karega. But how we are portraying, how we are displaying to our consumers, I think that's how people, will show their adoption behavior more. Like, that's my take on this. And now I would like Roy sir to please, show the other perspective.
Yeah,
Over to you, sir.
I think what Devika is trying to say, we can encapsulate in the word which I also started with. See, I did not talk about costs when I talked about the consumer buying behavior. I talked about the price value or the perceived value. So if we look into perceived value, there are 4 major elements through which value is determined of a product or service by the consumer. The first is functional value. So will this product fulfill what it is supposed to do? We have issues there. I mean, overheating, running cost, charging points, and blah, blah, blah. Then comes monetary value. Is it worth paying upfront 30% more? Will I really be able to realize? What if the battery conks out? I have a huge cost there. So that is where the financial or monetary value comes. Third, social value. Now, whether we accept or not, in India, still now, a huge amount of 2-wheeler and 4-wheeler purchases are influenced by the social circle. I myself couldn't get a automatic transmission around 8 years back when I was purchasing my first car, because all my peer group said, no, don't go for an automatic transmission. Whereas technologically, and given Indian road conditions where you have to constantly switch gears, automatic transmission car is as good as a geared car. Now, that is where the other point comes, is electric matlo. And finally, the concept of psychological value. So will I be able to realize the benefit of this car? Right now, even now in India, the 2-wheeler or a 4-wheeler for the first purchase, it's a matter of prestige for a target audience. I do not want to be the point of ridicule among my social circle. So if we look into EVs, EV is not performing in any of these. And I'm not saying it's not performing. In the consumer's mind, it is not. So the point here is not cost. See, we all have smartphones now, right? Why have we switched from keypad phones to smartphones? Have we paid equal price? No, we have paid more price. Why are we paying 1 lakh for an iPhone? Once I convince you of the value, the price or cost will be immaterial. That is the reason why we are upgraded from 2-wheelers to 4-wheelers, hatchbacks to sedans, sedans to luxury SUVs. The point is whether in these 4 value parameters, I can convince the customer that yes, this product will fulfill the functional value. It will give you value for the money you spend. It will give you social value, and it will be a peace of mind for you. Once that electric vehicles can do, the price differential, the price differential can take you to a certain extent. It will not be able to give you sustenance, because sustenance never happens because of price. It happens because of value. When I find out that my benefits are more than my costs, that is when the product runs, the service runs. So costs are only just one part of that value statement. So that is where I think I should stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your insights, and thank you, Dr. Devika, again for bringing out these key points. This brings me to my next question for Dr. Dubey. Dr. Dubey, EV batteries are made of rare earth elements like lithium, nickel, cobalt, or graphite that only exist beneath the surface of the earth and therefore depend on mining. So, these activities are considered to be very polluting, the whole process of mining. So, what viable alternatives exist in this space that can bring down the carbon footprint of EVs? Dr. Dubey, you're on mute.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, as you know, mining industry is a very energy intensive industry.
Sir, your voice is not clear. Dr. Dubey, I think you're on mute again.
No, I think
There
his
are
pen is frozen.
information.
I think he's back now.
Is it clear now?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir. Please go ahead, Dr. Dubey.
Look, as far as the mining industry is considered, it is very much energy intensive. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you're audible.
I think sir can
Okay, fine.
switch off his video and can talk. I think there's
So maybe you could try that. Maybe you could turn off the video and just speak. Maybe that.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it better now?
Yes, sir. Yes. Please continue.
So, in the process, there are various steps for the extraction of minerals, and to understand it in quick way, can we go to slide number 8?
Sure, sir. We're just sharing the screen.
Okay, slide number 8. No, go back. Yes, this one. Go back. No, not this. The one which you showed it just now. Yes, this one. No. Yes, this one. Yes, this one. You have asked that how to reduce the GHG emission while mining. For example, lithium. I have taken a case of lithium here. You can see that in lithium, if we go by a route of lithium hydroxide by hard rock method, then we go and touch the index of 16. When we go extraction of lithium by lithium hydroxide by brine solution, we just reduce by six grades, and we work at 10. We work at about 6. When we work for lithium through lithium carbonate and hard rock method, we touch about 10 point. And when we go by lithium carbonate by brine solution, the GHG emissions are just coming as 2.5 only. So this way we can understand that the best way to reduce the GHG emission is to choose the best process which generates less amount of GHG emission. Similarly, if we exploit nickel, then these days the availability of nickel is less in other ores, so we are going by laterite. So if we choose laterite, then the GHG emissions are much more as compared to the other ores. This is one of the thing, and also the condition of resource or the mine and rock structure is such that the stripping ratio is very, very high. The stripping ratio means if you remove 10 parts of rocks, then you get 1 part of the lithium, for example. So these days, the stripping ratio, at least for these rare earths and these precious metals, this is becoming very, very high and high. Sometimes it goes as a 20 or 30 stripping ratio. So in that case, if we are having very high stripping ratio, then a lot of mining has to be done. And in the process of mining, a lot of GHG emissions are produced by the mining equipments and other activities. So in this way, either we have to optimize our mining process, or we have to optimize the processing, the chemical engineering process by which we can reduce our GHG emissions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts. Let me just disable the screen sharing.
Can I also add to that? We have looked at the lithium that we get from, that we get from raw earth that is mined, freshly mined. But soon we should start seeing a secondary market for recycled lithium, and that should significantly impact the total CO2 emissions that we get that are emitted.
Right. Thank you so much, sir and Pranav sir, for adding to this. This brings me to my next question for Mr. Pakka. So, India is expected to be the world's third largest automotive market in terms of volume by 2026. Further, the EV market is expected to grow at a CAGR of 44% between 2020 to 27 and is expected to hit 6.34 million unit annual sales by 2027. What can be done to make India into a hub for EV production and exports?
Yeah. These numbers are like, I would say it's a breakneck speed of growth. But for India to have such a growth, first we need to make ourselves self-reliant with respect to the technology and the materials. Otherwise, we are always at the mercy of the imports. Even today, majority of the EV two-wheelers, I'm mostly talking about the EV two-wheelers, that's the biggest market we have right now. So even the powertrains and everything is being imported. If we are doing that, then we cannot be a hub or a EV hub to the world. For India to become the EV hub for the world, we need to have our own technology, especially on the power electronics. We are still, I would say, not on par with the rest of the countries. Government and the companies, private companies, has to work towards, developing the powertrains. That is one aspect. That is the power electronics, and the other is the battery technology. Right now, lithium is the major battery. The battery chemistry. I say we should work on the alternate batteries, such as aluminium or the sodium ion, or for that matter, hydrogen is also another good alternate. If we can come up with such an alternate to the current battery chemistry, then we can be a EV hub. Otherwise, again, we are at the mercy of the imports. And the other one is the materials itself. In the batteries and in even the motor, we use heavy metals, which are again very expensive, and we are importing them. We are not manufacturing them here yet, not the magnets. So government as well as the private industries has to focus on that part of the EV ecosystem. We have to build this ecosystem for India to become a EV hub. Otherwise, we'll still be importing and just using the electric vehicles in the country. Will not become a hub. So this is my take that we should create our own ecosystem to become self-reliant. And as the Pranav was also saying about the recycling of the lithium ion, that is another good step India should also take up, because right away we have imported a lot of lithium cells, and if we can recycle and reuse that lithium, that will also help us become a little self-reliant over there. So yeah, that is it from my end. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your response. This brings me to my next question for Mr. Pranav and Mr. Gupta. So, which business models are ideal to make electric mobility financially and operationally sustainable in the country? And how can India be self-dependent in terms of raw materials and technologies for EV? So first Mr. Pranav and then Mr. Gupta.
Thank you, Nika. So yeah, I think there are two parts to this question. So in terms of business models, I wouldn't say there is a particular business model that's so different from what we currently have, which would be ideal for electric mobility as a whole, because electric mobility is really there to replace, let's say, petrol powered mobility or diesel mobility, right? So people are already familiar with say what the buying process is or how they can own and things like that, and people don't really want to change. I mean, too much change is not really something that users are going to like. We are already asking them to make a big change by going from petrol vehicles to electric vehicles, and they won't want a whole lot of other things to change as well. So I think that's the most natural course that the industry will take. But there could certainly be other business models that could be looked at. For that, perhaps Mr. Gupta can answer that better than I can. But I think given the same conditions or the same access to say fund, to financing, given the same access to say insurance companies or a lot of things which are currently unknowns right now, I think it will naturally take the same course. I mean, we do have some traditional automotive companies moving into a hybrid model, like what Mercedes is doing, and which, by the way, is something that we are looking at implementing ourselves, is a hybrid between a direct to consumer as well as having a traditional dealership kind of model, and using that as a way to penetrate the market. But yeah, there's of course there are things like shared mobility on the horizon, some distributed ownership models, but I really don't think people will be too comfortable with that because again, it's a very new thing. So people don't like change, not too much at once. Now, in terms of how India can be self-dependent in terms of raw materials, I think we are a little bit behind in terms of being independent with regards to the raw materials that are required for electric vehicles. So we have our whole mining industry that is well suited for traditional steel mines or traditional steel production or metals production. But electric vehicles, we have caught ourselves on the wrong foot. So this will take some time for us to develop, and unfortunately, we don't have too many certain lithium resources. But with new chemistries, and I honestly think only sodium has the potential to replace lithium, the lithium ion batteries, and sodium that we have enough of. So should we see a change in the battery chemistry that's driving electric vehicles, we might have an opportunity there to be more self-reliant. But otherwise, the option just is that we have to make investments overseas that can help secure our secure the raw materials for our electric vehicle industry. For technology, unfortunately, for that we do have to have competent engineers. We do need to have an education system that can develop these competent engineers, and we need to have the societal support, or at least we just need an entire ecosystem in the jobs market, for example, wherein these core engineering functions are also awarded in the same way or also respected the same way as something like software engineering, right? So if we do that, then we should be able to build on our competence that we already have developed as an automobile manufacturing hub, and then take that and translate it into say being a hub for electric vehicles. Now, yeah, I think that's mostly Mr. Gupta can continue.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gupta, what would you like to add to this?
Thanks, Mr. Pranav, for giving this insight. But then, just to add to what he already mentioned, see, the shift towards EV mobility is a game changer for the whole automotive sector, which contributes about 7.1% to India's GDP and about 49% to the overall manufacturing GDP of India. See, to boost the adoption of EVs, I mean, I already spoke about it, but then there was a National Electric Mobility Mission Plan in 2020, which enables faster manufacturing and adoption of EVs in the country. The capital subsidy scheme, which is FAME 2, has now been extended till 31st March 2024. And the maximum subsidy cap has also been increased under that particular scheme. So the two-wheeler EV segment alone, this rose about 422% during 2021. The two-wheelers are forecasted to be one of the fastest and early adopters of electrification, and this is hugely beneficial for India Inc. and its frontline workers. See, as per one of the estimates, more than 4 lakh jobs will be created in last mile delivery and supply chain segment between March to June 2022, which is say 50% higher than what it was in year 2021. So companies have to meet the rising demand by hiring more frontline workers and providing them with economic means to make deliveries. A rising fuel cost is always a concern, and hence two-wheeler EVs are the best solution for their business models. See, I personally think that there are 3 areas where businesses can invest and build offering around electric mobility. And these are, say, mobility, energy, and infrastructure. I'll take all these 3 one by one. So mobility, anyway, we all have spoken much about it. So I'll go to the energy one. Now, when I say energy, so this includes electricity used for charging the vehicles and storing in the batteries. Now, EVs can be charged from renewable energy sources, say wind power in the night and solar power during the day. The excess power stored in the EV batteries, while one is not using the EVs, I mean, the owner can trade or sell the stored power to earn additional revenues. The smart grid implementation will allow V2G operations. When I say V2G, it is vehicle to grid. So once you have the smart grids implemented, you can also sell the power out of your electric vehicles to the grid, and you can earn or generate revenue out of it. And there is also a concept of virtual power plant called as VPP, plants, which is coming up, which will make this happen, wherein you can sell the power stored in the batteries to the grid. And, if you're not using it, you can probably sell it at the grid prices, and then you can restore the power in the batteries, probably from the renewable energy sources. Now, the third one, which I spoke about, is the infrastructure. So again, this is something which we have already spoken about, but then just to reiterate, yes, India needs to have robust backbone of charging infrastructure across the country. Now, this includes the charging infra, the battery swapping station, everything. And then the stakeholders are the charger manufacturers, the INC or the EPC players who will develop one particular charging station, the charge point operators as an investors, the battery manufacturers, battery recycling, as we have already been talking about. My co-panelists Pranav and Mr. Paka spoke about it. So battery as a service, this is another model which is also picking up, and then in the initial stages, but then yes, it will definitely pick up. So these are different business opportunities and different models, maybe, which can be built around EV charging infrastructure. Now, just to add to what Mr. Paka already mentioned about being self-reliant, see, I feel this is the high time that India should become self-reliant in EV program to make it long-term sustainable. While we all know what government is doing in terms of pushing the localization and PLI schemes, see, there are few points which I think, or which I would like to highlight. One, there is no, I believe, I mean, my personal view, there is no shortage of talent pool in India. The problem is in terms of long-term investments in R&D. See, barring few of the organizations, most of the companies, they take an easy route of technology transfer or technology partnerships with multinational companies. If we have to create a long-term, sustainable, and self-reliant ecosystem, we must not only focus on making in India, but also on designing in India and designing for India. See, if we don't do this, we may have FDIs, which may serve the purpose. We may still be able to make all of the components and whatever it takes to run the ecosystem. But we will permanently stall our initiatives on innovation and R&D for Indian needs. See, any multinational would develop for the global need, but then when we do have the R&D centers or the research oriented centers in India, we will be developing the products as per Indian specific needs. Let me admit that electronics is one weak area for or in India, which is an integral part of EV. We are heavily reliant upon countries like Japan or Korea or Taiwan or even China for critical technology components like semiconductors or sensors or motors, controllers, maybe the powertrain. Now, I think the government should identify the key components which goes into EV, maybe work with the local industry, create a kind of task force to work on the identified projects. And this can create a kind of structure to encourage the companies to engage in R&D initiatives on EV and its components. I think perhaps with the kind of talent pool that we have in India, we may definitely become a global hub, if not in everything, but at least in certain segments of EVs. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for telling us about interesting models like battery as a service and the new things that the industry can explore with. With this, I come to the last question for the day, for which I would like Mr. Pakka to explain. So, sir, one of the issues raised against the PLI scheme for EVs is the qualification criteria. Group level revenue requirement of 10,000 crore rupees plus a minimum investment of rupees 3,000 crore in fixed assets. Such a steep cutoff can stifle innovation. So, what do you think on this, and what are the other impediments that you see to the scheme's success? Mr. Pakka, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay, so I would say it's very similar to saying, we are putting all our eggs into one big basket. Instead of that, government has to, when I'm saying one big basket, there is few big companies. So few big companies, only they are getting qualified for this scheme. And we have, if that company goes bust, everything is gone. Instead, I would say government should focus on smaller players, putting your eggs in many other baskets. That will give us bigger yield, bigger results, or the better results, I would say. And as I told earlier, we have to build an ecosystem. In order to build an ecosystem, few big players cannot alone do that. It has to be, the opportunity should be given to everyone. As Nikhilji was saying, we do have good talent in India. It's just that it's about the opportunity. Not many companies are spending on the R&D. If government can accommodate to these smaller companies as well, they can spend on the R&D, and we can come up with our own technology, which will make us self-reliant. So I strongly feel that they have to reconsider that. The selection criteria or the qualification criteria for the benefit of the country and to build a better ecosystem. That's about my take.
Thank you so much for your answer, sir. There is one important question which I think we should raise in this discussion, which was raised by our audience. It is an open floor, so anyone can answer this question actually. The the question is basically, how do we ensure that EVs are safer for users? And what can be done in the future to ensure that the safety of these vehicles can be ensured for customers? So anyone can take up this question.
I can answer that as a
Sure.
two-wheeler manufacturer.
Sure.
Yeah, this is, I believe, in simple terms about the fires, the EVs two-wheeler catching fire in the last 4 weeks, right? So
Yes.
there are several reasons for that. One is the poor quality control and the poor engineering, I would say. And majority of these vehicles are imported. The technology is imported. Those vehicles are not really made for Indian way of usage, not the Indian conditions. So first we need to focus on the Indian conditions and the Indian way of usage. And even to dig deeper into the root cause of these fires, uh, what we understand is, first, from the engineering point of view, they have to engineer the vehicle in such a way that we are never abusing the battery. If you look into the configurations of the vehicles, most of the time the batteries are smaller, the motors are bigger, the output power is way far bigger. That basically, you're trying to pull twice the power from a battery than its actual capacity. So that actually makes the battery uncomfortable in simple terms, in human language. That makes it heat up. So when this is repeated continuously as a fatigue, there are chances of something failing inside and catching the fire, and that fire propagating outside. So that is one particular possibility of EVs catching fire. This is with respect to the engineering part. And they also need to understand the temperatures of the various places of the country, India. We have wide range of temperature differences throughout the country. They need to understand that and engineer the thermal management system of their overall vehicle as per that. And if we dig a little deeper into the technology, going to the actual raw material, that is the cells. Mostly we import the cells and we make a battery pack out of it. This cell quality should be first maintained properly. That is one of the very basic thing which companies has to look at. If the cell quality is not good, there is a high chance that over a period of time, uh, one of the cells in those hundreds of cells can go bad and it can catch fire, and that can propagate the fire to the rest of the cells. So these are the root causes, and this can be definitely fixed by maintaining a strict cell quality and the manufacturing process and the quality control. At the same time, we also need to, there are many companies who are working, and we are also working on that. We have implemented as well. That is, there is a way to stop the fire propagation inside the battery pack. In case if something happened, even after all the precautions and all the quality control, if something happened and if a cell catches fire inside the battery pack, there are ways to actually suppress that fire, and we are working on that, and that is very much possible. And I believe the entire industry will adapt to it, and government of India will also be coming over with such policies to enforce it onto every other manufacturer. So I would say this is only a short-term issue, a hiccup in the EV adoption. So people should not be worried much about it. This will definitely be resolved.
Right. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Pranav, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, sure. So just in terms of numbers, petrol vehicles are, I think they are about 10 times more likely to go up in flames than electric vehicles. I think just in numbers for petrol vehicles, out of every 1 lakh units, about 1,500. So what this is 1.5%, they go up in flames. For electric vehicles, so far at least the numbers have not been that high. I mean, they're actually quite low. There's something like 25 fires for every 1 lakh units sold. So that way they're still safer. It's just that they make the news much often, more often, because I think a petrol vehicle going up in flame, that's not really newsworthy these days. So yeah, that's one. And I think there's another question about whether electric vehicles are more dangerous in an accident. So again, this really depends on the design of the vehicle. But typically, again, electric vehicles are not so dangerous because, for one thing, we don't have a hot engine and we don't have a combustible material that is at risk of falling onto that hot engine and catching fire. So, but yeah, I mean, there's no saying that if it's not designed properly, yes, it could catch fire. So, a lot of it also depends on the design of the vehicle, how some of the challenges or the unique properties of, say, the batteries are being taken care of to ensure that they don't go up in flames when there's, say, a nail penetration or something. So design can account for a majority of the safety factor in these vehicles.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for answering this. With this, we come to an end to this discussion today. I would like to thank all our panel members and the audience for taking time out from their busy schedules and joining us to this interactive discussion, where we touched upon quite a few interesting points. Thank you all. Have a good day. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ma'am, can I add a point here?
Sure, ma'am. Please do.
Yeah, so I was listening to Pranav sir and Parshuram sir. They are very much right. And, so basically the format is that somebody is asking this question and they are answering. They are the experts and they are answering. And the person who's asking this question gets satisfied. Acha, aisa nahi hoga. Okay. This is how, I mean, they are talking about the design. But now we know the power of internet. So now it happens with one car or with one vehicle. The information goes within a few minutes to the world. Ki aisa ho gaya hai. So EVs are not suitable, not comfortable, and they are not good to buy. Though they are not affordable also. Ab to kharidna nahi kar sakte because they are not safe. So the next question is, the next point is, we need to place this thing psychologically in the minds of the customers, that this, as Parshuram sir was saying, if at all we do a lot of change in the design, as Pranav sir was saying, even if we do a lot of things, the style and everything we change in the in the design of the motor and everything, but still there could be a case. But now the thing is how to remove that that risk wala factor from the minds of the consumers. So then here comes the role of the marketers, that how they are going to place this concept in the minds of the customers. This thing happened with just one product out of 100. This is not going to happen with you, the product which you will buy, and it is safe. So I think something has to be done on that perspective as well. So thank you.
Definitely, we realize that is why we have marketing experts like you and Professor Roy on the panel today.
Yeah, basically, people come out with different cutting machines. They say that these cutting machines are very much efficient. They can cut, things in, very minutely. But wo aapko bhi cut kar sakti hai. Those machines can cut your fingers, can cut your body. But, the risk is associated. Similarly, risk will be there with each and every product which is available in the world. It can be EV, it can be, knife, it can be anything. But, how do you place this concept in the consumer's mind? Ki safe hai, this is good, this is best. This is better than whatever you have in the market, whatever options you have in the market. I think government also has to work on that, and the bodies, have to work on that. So thank you so much.
Right, a very valid point, Prav. With that, I would like to end this discussion. Thank you everyone once again for joining us today and taking time out for this interaction. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.